Good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the Rotary Club of Centennial United, I would warmly welcome you all to the fourth and final session of Project Youth Decides Young Civic Leaders Forum. Before we start off this session, I would like to thank you all for being here since the inception of this project in October. And I know that 4 months is not an easy commitment, especially for people who, of your age, have various educational and other commitments to do. But I would very gratefully appreciate your effort on behalf of the Project Youth Decide team here at Rotary Club of Centennial United. So without further ado, I would like to proceed with today's workshop, which is about a very timely skill that none of us in Sri Lanka know how to use effectively for change making, which is about digital storytelling. The resource person who is conducting today's project with Benisters Tushan, who is the founder and chief instructor of Digital Storytelling, which is an educational initiative that empowers the youth across Sri Lanka with skills of citizen journalism and digital literacy since early 2016. In the past 5 years, he has trained over 2,000 young storytellers across Sri Lanka. Benisters has also worked as a senior program officer for 4 years at the Office of National Unity and Reconciliation, the apex government agency to promote reconciliation on digital communications and economic empowerment initiatives with war-affected communities. He has previously worked in the media, research, and development sectors. Benisters is currently reading for his attorney at laws at Sri Lanka Law College. So without any further delay, I would warmly like to welcome you, Benisters Tushan, to conduct today's session. I hope everyone who is joining in will find it very entertaining and educational. Thank you.
Thank you, Satya, for that warm introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for making your time on a weekday evening amongst your busy schedules. I know you might have had classes and stuff. Okay. Um, all right. So before we move into what we are going to talk about, which is digital storytelling and how we can use it to impact people's perception, right? As Satya mentioned, my name is Benislas Tushan. I I run this education initiative called Digital Storytelling while after a long time becoming a full-time student reading for my attorney at law qualification. Right. Uh, One thing, you guys don't have to wait until the end to ask questions. Please feel free to unmute yourselves, ask any questions at any time. I'll be more than happy to stop, engage, and have a discussion around the things we will discuss today. All right. Okay. Let's see who is going to be the first person who would give us the answer. What do you guys think about digital storytelling? When you hear digital storytelling, what comes to your mind? And one thing I really want to tell you as I begin this session is there's no right or wrong answer. And I'm not here to ask you for definitions, so mark how intelligent you are or anything, right? This is like, I'm here as a storyteller. I'm here as a young person who really believes in this idea of using storytelling to change the perception of our communities. So I want to throw back this question at you and ask you, what do you mean by digital storytelling? How do you perceive it? Or what is your first impression? Anyone?
A story that is being told in like a social platform.
Great. A story that is told in a social platform. I'm sorry, I can't read your name, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Ditni Pereira.
Hi, Didney. Thank you. A story that is told in a social platform. Thank you. Thank you for that input. Anyone else? What do you guys think about what digital storytelling is? What's so big about it? Or why does it even really matter to that question? And Supulya has shared that sharing experiences and stories. Very good. Thank you, Supulya. Nipun, do you have any inputs about what digital storytelling really is?
Like telling a story on a movie, like.
Okay, telling stories. Did you say mobile platforms? Okay, right. Thank you very much for those all those inputs. Others, don't worry, I'm not going to call out everyone in line, but ideally it'll be great if you guys could just unmute yourself and throw your ideas, right? Because in that way, like, we have taken like a chunk of our time to be here, right? So rather we make use of it and have an interactive discussion, right? So let me share my screen as I begin today. So digital storytelling for change making is what we are going to speak about today, right? And I wanted to discuss this idea about what digital storytelling is and how we can really use it to create change in our communities, right? For me, what storytelling is brilliantly captured in this simple quote by Robert McKay, in which he says, storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. He says, storytelling is the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today. I'm going to take a minute and reflect. Like, if you really look at the communication materials or the language the brands use right now, right? Let it be the world of tech, let it be the world of business, let it be the world of services, right? The language they use has, like, they have found another buzzword or the jargon word in storytelling, right? But one of the saddest realities is that, like, there's so much depth to this, what storytelling is, and people do not really understand it, right? It has almost become this another buzzword where people just throw it off easily, right? But what I want to do today is to really decode it in a way that it's very practical. And most of the things I'm going to share from here with you guys today are the things you already know, right? Most of the things you would have already heard of. But what I want to essentially do today here is to have a conversation with you and to get your ideas, and also to reframe your thinking in a way that how we can use this simple tool in our day-to-day lives in a powerful way to impact the perceptions of those who are living around us for the positive reasons, right? So, as Robert McKay puts it, it's the most powerful way to put ideas into the world today, right? Then comes this question, what's storytelling, right? Understanding the process of storytelling, right? For me, storytelling is this simple idea, right? Storytelling is the process of communicating an idea or an emotion or a piece of information from a storyteller to the audience, right? It might, the definition of it or the language of it might sound very simplistic or overly simplistic for you, but it carries the whole depth of what storytelling really is, right? It's the process of communicating an idea or an emotion or an information from storyteller to the audience, right? For example, let's take this process, right, between you guys and I here, right? We have taken today's Tuesday, right? A Tuesday off, right? To listen to someone you have never heard of, right? But what I'm really trying to do here is to sell you the idea that this tool called digital storytelling is powerful. And if we use it rightly, we can create change in our communities. And we'll discuss more about how we can use it effectively throughout today. So in this process, I am a storyteller. I'm bringing you an idea, and you are the audience. And while you are talking, you are a storyteller, and I become the audience. And this whole process of transaction of ideas is what we essentially call storytelling is, right? And we all agree that as we grow up, right, from our very childhood, we grow up listening to stories. We grow up listening to different ideas. We grow up believing those stories what we were listening to. And we grow up and our perception are impacted by the stories we hear. That is why if we learn to use this tool, especially in a digital realm, and if we learn to use it right, then it becomes a powerful tool to change perceptions, right? Okay. How many of you can recall her? Or whether has anyone of you heard of her or seen her? It's fine if you haven't. So her name is Amanda Gorman, right? She was one of the youngest poets who shared her poem during the inauguration of President Joe Biden on January 21st, right? And why I've inserted her picture here is that Amanda's credibility to be at that stage, although she was young, right? She's almost 1/5 of the age of the current president of the United States. But she got the podium and she was able to communicate her idea through a tool of storytelling called poetry, right? She believes in the power of poems, and she was able to use the tool of storytelling to communicate her idea to the world, right? And that is in one of the highest stages in the world also, right? So I want to ask you guys, what are some of the tools of storytelling you encounter in your daily lives, right? Understand it simply. Storytelling is a process of communicating an idea from the storyteller to the audience, right? What are tools? Before moving on, let me ask you a simple question. What do we mean by tools? Can anyone say? I remember studying it in grade 6 science, 6 or 8. What do we call tools?
Techniques.
Techniques, okay.
Oh, sorry, what was
Thank
the
you.
question?
Yeah,
Oh.
thank you, Didney. Which is right. I'm asking a very like a simplistic definition of how do we define tools? Like we might have studied the examples of fulcrum, pulley, and all of it, right? I'm not here to take you a science class, but just to make a larger point here, like what does tools do? What does the tool do? Sorry. Anyone? What you said, Disney, was right? It correlates with the larger point. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. Something that aids in accomplishing a particular task, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. Right. Something that like tool is something that makes our life easy or makes our like accomplishing something. It makes our life easy or help us to accomplish a task in an easier way. Right. And now I'm asking you, what are the tools of storytelling we have, or what are the avenues we have to communicate an idea to the world? A simple question.
Social media?
Social media. Okay, thank you. What else? What are the other tools we have? Okay, let me reframe it, right? Let's take, yes, social media is tool in a way. Let's take social media as a platform, right? And in that platform, if you want to communicate a message, what are the tools you would use to communicate that idea into the world in an effective way?
Through a piece of writing.
Through a piece of writing, very good, right? That's one. What else? Art, right? Very good. Well, piece of writing, art. What are the tools you guys use very often to send a message or to communicate a message?
A text.
A text, okay. What else?
You can do a video if you want.
Very good. Videos, right? Films or videos. Then at the same time, you can tell one more example when you're talking about videos. Photography, right? Music. And there are like dozens and dozens of tools we have at our disposal to communicate a message, right? And different people use different tools, right? And what Amanda used was the tool of poetry to communicate the message about a nation that is healing, right? And today we are going to talk about digital storytelling. And in order to communicate a message on the digital realm, how do we use those tools, right? So we know storyteller is someone who communicates a message. Audience is someone who is at the receiving end of the message. And a tool is something that makes that communication easy, right? Rather than having to sit and speak about something, it's easier to show a picture and explain about something, right? Rather, like for example, if I just sit and talk right in front of the camera, guys, right? Most of you won't be really interested, right? But the moment I use a presentation, there's at least some form of engagement that's created there, right? That becomes a tool, right? So in our day-to-day lives, as we become storytellers, right? As we move further, we'll understand like all of us are one way or the other become storytellers in our everyday lives. How do we use these tools effectively, right? Before moving on to one of the most important parts of it, I want to give an activity for you guys, right? Do you have a pen and a paper or even a smartphone, whatever that is, like something where you can put down your ideas? If so, you can just give a thumbs up reaction or just unmute and say yes, whatever that works best for you. Okay, Daphne has. Others, you guys don't have a pen and a paper?
I do now.
Right. All right. So ideally, I hope you guys would definitely have an access to a pen and a paper or a smartphone or like somewhere you can scribble, right? I'm going to ask you a question, right? As we are talking about digital storytelling, we are going to go into one of the interesting case studies that are out there, right? Before moving into the case study, I want to ask you a question of, write your 10 first impressions about Africa, right? Your first 10 impressions. Don't Google, don't go and refer, don't ask someone, your own ones, right? And there is no right or wrong answers. These are what you have perceived about what Africa is. Write 10 first impressions, right? If you want to write something like, okay, Savannah or Nile, like write them as natural natural resources, right? Something along, not natural resources, like tourism sites, or like however you want, right? Write general ideas rather than going into like a specific names. Can someone read out the things you've written? Yes, Daphne, go ahead.
10 things about Africa, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Daphne.
Okay. So poverty, low women status, inspiring stories, good culture, really, like I think the people there are really beautiful. So that's 5. And I think religion is really great in Africa. We don't know much about it, but it's really great in Africa. And I think it's hot in Africa. And there's a lot of wild animals.
Right.
And there's many languages.
Right.
And there's a lot of wrong conceptions about Africa.
Right. Thank you, Daphne. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'll give the floor to one more person to share your ideas about Africa, your first impressions.
Hi.
Hi.
I only have 8 written down. Is that
No
okay?
worries. That's perfectly all right. Yeah.
Colorful clothes. The iconic African trees, I think they're called baobab. I'm not sure. And
Okay.
wildlife. The African dance. I think it's called Afro. It being one of the largest continents, second largest. The people there are really pretty, warm climate, and tourism sites like I don't know that.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you, right, to like next to what you've written, just mark whether what you've written is positive or negative. Right? Say it's poverty, right? It's not a positive thing, it's a negative thing, right? And it doesn't have to be as per anyone else's standard. In your point of view, say the particular characteristics or the first impression you have written about Africa is a positive first impression or a negative first impression, right? Just mark it. You guys would wonder what the purpose of this whole drama is. I'll tell you why. But just mark it. Right. I hope you guys would have marked whether it's positive or negative. I want to tell you a story of 2 individuals and tell you why we did this exercise, right? So there's a country called Ivory Coast in the western side of Africa, right? You might have heard about it. Ivory Coast is very similar to Sri Lanka, right? It was affected by a civil war, and also Ivory Coast was affected by epidemics. Like pandemics is a global wide thing. Epidemics is what happens within a country, right? I hope I'm right, or a region. And Ivory Coast had both. So there were these two journalists and a photojournalist. His name is Austin Merrill. On the left, he's a journalist, and on the right, his name is Peter DeCampo. His name is he's a photojournalist. They were sent to this country called Ivory Coast to cover about what's happening in the Ivory Coast, especially about the civil war that's happening there, and about the epidemic that was happening there, right? So they went there, they stayed there for 4 weeks, right? They covered the stories, and they were traveling back on the plane back to the United States, right? And as they were going back, this person on the right, his name is Peter DeCampo, who is the photojournalist. He was going through the pictures he has taken in his work camera, which is a large DSLR camera, and also on his iPhone, right? Back in 2012, I think it's either iPhone 4 or something, right? And he started finding a pattern that most of the pictures he has taken in his DSLR camera were pictures that shows Ivory Coast in a very negative light, right? Ivory Coast as a war-torn place, Ivory Coast as a place where people are suffering, Ivory Coast as a place where there is intense poverty, Ivory Coast is a place where people are starving. All those images were captured by him in the DSLR camera, right? And when he looked at his phone, he found a lot of photos that were completely contrasting from what was captured on the DSLR. For example, a mother was walking her child to the school. That picture was there, right? There were young guys who were playing at a refugee camp. That picture was there, right? There was vibrant economic activity where people were coming, buying vegetables, selling things. That picture was there. All of them were captured in his mobile phone. While the pictures that were captured on his DSLR were completely portraying Ivory Coast in a negative light, right? And this question really started bugging him or bothering him because he's the same person who captured both, right? But DSLR tells a completely different side of the story than what's captured on the smartphone, right? So he wanted to do an interesting experiment. What he did was he went to the high schools in Seattle, in the state of Washington, and he asked the same question to the American high schoolers, asking, what are your first 10 impressions about the Africa in general, right? And the answers he found out really boggled his mind, because almost all 10 things that were written in their answer sheets were negative. They said Africa is a country of terrorism. They said Africa is a country of rape. They said Africa is a country of absurd poverty. They said Africa is a country where feminists there, right? Where people are suffering without food, right? And most of the things that was listed down there were negative attributes to Africa. And he asked them a question. Have you guys ever been to Africa? And they said no. Then he asked them a question. Then how do you say this is what Africa is without being there? And they started answering. We saw like Africa is this in CNN. We saw Africa is this on social media. We saw Africa is this way from our friends. This is what our parents told us, right? This is what are the stories we were hearing about Africa, right? And it really dawned on him that how an entire continent, right, that experiences the lives and its struggles like all of us do, is perceived in a very negative way, right? But then we did this interesting activity in Sri Lanka, right? I always, I run this called, the education initiative called digital storytelling. In this 6 months course, one of the questions we generally ask is, like, what are your first impressions about Africa? And also we ask, what are your first impression about the United States of America, about a particular country and about a continent? And almost 90% of the answers about the USA are positive answers, right? Almost 90%, right? And almost 75% of the answers about Africa are negative ones. But if you really see, some of the negatives that are in Africa are also there in America, right? For example, is there poverty in America? Of course, yes. Is there homelessness in America? Of course, yes. Is there terrorism in America? Of course, yes. Right? But why do we attribute all these negative attributes to only one continent, while the other country is completely perceived in a different way, although it faces similar challenges? Right? And when we ask them the question, then they start, oh, this is what we have been seeing in the movies. This is what I saw in the magazines. This is what my friends told me. This is what my parents told us. And one of them even interestingly said, none of my parents said, one day you should be able to move to Africa. They always said you should be able to move to America, right? And this is where we are coming to talk about the power of narratives, right? And how certain narratives are attributed to the communities, right? So what is really a narrative, right? What do we mean by a narrative, right? Can someone answer? How do you guys define a narrative, right? For example, if you look at a 2-hour movie, right? One of the movies you might have looked at recently, and the next day when you meet your friend, they'll ask, okay, what was the movie about? Right? You tell about that movie in a 1-minute summary or in 2 lines, right? The crux of what the movie is about. That is what they call the narrative, right? Or the moral of the story, right? And in the information age, this narrative is extremely polarized. We attribute certain negative narratives to a country or a community, and we attribute certain positive narratives to a different country or a different community. But the real truth is, all these different aspects of life exist in all the communities, right? Whether it's Africa or whether it's America. So Peter DeCampo and Austin Merrill did not stop with that experiment with the high schoolers. They asked this question. If we go and confront our editors in our news, they're saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong. The world I saw in Africa through my smartphone is the real world, because it's not painted in black and white. It was a mixture of gray, right? But what we are showing to the world through our press or through journalism or that particular media is black, or it's showcasing African in a very negative light. And if they want to confront their editors, the next time they would say is, you're fired. We'll find someone else to do this story, right? Then they understood this problem, how we can tell the stories of Africa in a different way, without having to depend on any of these mainstream medias, without having to depend on any of these outlets, without the outsiders going and trying to tell the stories. Why don't we empower the Africans to tell their own stories? And what they decided was, everyone had a smartphone. Everyone had a decent camera. Everyone had simple tools, right? Like basic photo editing tools. Everyone had this social media with instant audience to post their stories. For example, say you have 1,000 friends on Instagram, right? There's a very good chance that at least 500 of them will see your story. It depends on the algorithm also. But yes, there's a higher chance that they'll tell your story. So everyone has an instant audience, unlike the past, right? Why don't we give the power back to the Africans to tell their own stories, right? Why don't we let them take ownership of their narratives rather than trying to, like someone else from the outside, trying to tell how the rest of the world should perceive Africa as, right? And that question really lit a bulb in his mind. And they started this storytelling movement called Everyday Africa, right? So what is really Everyday Africa, right? So Everyday Africa is, if you search with the hashtag, right, you can see almost more than 500,000 posts, right? 562,397 posts so far posted with this hashtag called Everyday Africa. So what it is, right? So Everyday Africa is a photography movement where photographers who are living in Africa come forward to tell the stories as they are, without any agenda, about how everyday lifestyle in Africa looks like, right? For example, what do? Right? They take a picture, right? Then they write a caption and they share it with the world, right? They take a picture, they write a caption, they share it with the world, right? If you see, these pictures are like that, right? They take a picture from the, they write a caption and they share it with the world, right? And if you see, there are like almost 5,590 posts here, right? So what does it really mean? If you really see, right, if you really look at this picture, right, it has a simple caption. You can see there is a lot of life happening, and the caption is a reflection of the past before nationwide COVID-19 lockdown, when Zimbabwe's Harare streets were busy, before social distancing masked their natural inclination to gather. Some would argue that the lockdown has crippled the economy, but perhaps saving lives is more important at the moment, as one can always revive an economy, right? So we in Sri Lanka, like thousands of miles apart, oceans apart, are sitting together and seeing how life in Zimbabwe looked like. And the moment we see, we can also recognize this story is very common to us also, right? And there's a thread that connects the humanities, whether that was in Africa or that is in Sri Lanka. Because we all have been complaining how life was right before the lockdown, right? And there was the same argument that, yes, it might cripple the economy, but we might need to save more lives, right, during the lockdown, right? So we can instantly see this connectivity. Okay, this is the same challenge people in Zimbabwe are also facing, right? That immediate connection we are able to draw, sitting thousands of miles apart and learning on a virtual platform, right? And this is the premise of the storytelling, that we can tell our own stories using everyday Africa. Africans said, okay, there are almost 600,000 Africans said, we are going to tell our story using this platform. What do? We take a simple picture that reflects our reality, write a caption, put everyday Africa hashtag, share it. And the editors board would review it and share it back, right? And for this, they did not have to depend on any of the like foreign journalists to come in. They did not have to depend on any of the big media publishing houses or big media corporations to tell their stories. They did not have to depend on multi-million-dollar investment. All they had to do was take a picture, write a caption, put a hashtag, share the story, right? And this Everyday Africa movement really revolutionized the premise of digital storytelling using mobile photography and using social media to bring the stories of our communities to the mainstream, right? Most of us would think, okay, Africans, okay, some of you have written, right? When we could still dance off the rooftops in Josie without worry, right? It's in South Africa. It talks about how the rooftop hangouts look like, right? It gives us a unique perspective, because whether we like it or not, our perception about Africa has been coined and has been greatly influenced by what we have been seeing in the media all this time, right? So this Everyday Africa movement has really revolutionized storytelling and given a voice to the Africans to tell their own story, right? Rather than having to depend on anyone else. All they needed was a smartphone and a decent camera and the ability to capture a story and share the story. After this Everyday Africa movement, there were hundreds of movements that sprang up around the world like that. And one of those was Everyday Sri Lanka. If you guys are on Instagram, I don't know, you guys can look at the Everyday Sri Lankan storytelling, right? What does it showcase? It showcases how everyday life of Sri Lanka looks like, not how the international media is portrayed to be, not how the local media is portrayed to be. It showcases what everyday lifestyle looks like, right? In its honest form, right? Let it be Mulathil, let it be Mathur, let it be Puttalam, let it be Chilla, right? Let it be Colombo, let it be Jaffna, anything. It showcases what everyday Sri Lankans are going through, right? Our perception could be different, but there is one objective reality. And the whole point of digital storytelling is to help people to come more closer to reality from their perceptions or from where they have been all this time, right? So when we teach these storytelling moments, right, there's like everyday Sri Lanka, there's everyday Afghanistan, there's everyday Mumbai, there's everyday Black America, there's everyday Latin America, there is everyday Argentina, there is everyday Kabul. There are like dozens and dozens of everyday movement, right? And when I teach these everyday movements to students here, right, to the digital storytelling fellows who come for the classes, they get inspired. And these are some of the storytelling movements they went and started. And one of my favorite is this everyday Mulativ storytelling movement. And the student who started this movement, his name is Vidurushan. He's working as an IT professional right now. He said, sir, all this time, Sri Lankans all around the world and even in Sri Lanka perceive Mulattin to be a post-war place. It's a given reality that we went through the war. But I want to showcase the real life, the real happiness behind Mulattin. I want to showcase my region as a thriving place. I want to showcase the reality of how people are hopeful, how people are breaking the chains to come and to progress in life. And he started capturing and sharing those stories, right? In this story, you can see some of the students might not be able to afford a shoe, but they believe in the power of education, right? You can see how like the everyday lifestyle looks like in the Mulathiv, right? So this is one of those movements he started like this. Similarly, there are other everyday movements around Sri Lanka. Some of the students have got inspired and started. And this is also a very similar story. Everyday Kathankudi. One of the students said, sir, like following the Easter Sunday attacks, the Kathankudi was like seen as a terrorist spot. Like a lot of people misconceive what we are, right? And I want to change that. I want to change the perception about Kathakudi. I want to showcase like we are also people with same values, with same courage, right? So this showcases about the everyday Kathakudi. Then there is everyday Batiklo, and there are storytelling movements in Sri Lanka, right? And one of the other examples that followed the same model is Jaffnapedia, right? What they basically wanted to do was to showcase a glance at the everyday life in Jaffna, Sri Lanka, right? They wanted to showcase what everyday life in Jaffna looked like, right? A lot of people have written to them, like from different countries, whose parents have fled from Sri Lanka, or those whose roots are from Jaffna, saying, hey, all this time, but we have heard about Jaffna were negative things from the press or media. But thank you for showcasing what real Jaffna looks like. I'm looking forward to visiting this place one day, right? And what storytelling does is to bridge this gap between perception and reality. And that is what this exactly does, right? And this is not curated in a way to showcase Jaffna in a positive light or a negative light, but this is what happens on an everyday basis, right? And you can see stories like that. And this story was taken by a well-known economist called Anushka Vijayasinghe. When he visited Jaffna, when he was doing a story, when he was inspecting about the onion cultivation and the onion scene in Jaffna, he took them and he posted with the hashtag called Jaffnapedia, and they reposted his picture, right? So if you ever visit Jaffna or Batiklo or Mulathiv, and when you take pictures, you can share with those relevant hashtags to get featured. And that is one of the ways how you grow your organic following on Instagram also, right? So these are some of the examples of how everyday movements, right? How the digital storytelling can help us tell the everyday stories. Thus, it can help us fight the stereotypes that are prevalent in our communities, right? And one of the biggest challenges we understand in Sri Lanka is that the Sri Lankan communities are divided along racial, religious lines because of these narratives that are constantly told about these communities, right? For example, right? Say this person named X comes from this community, and we have a set of stereotypes that was ingrained on us from our parental generation. or from the society or from the conventional wisdom of the society, right? But what storytelling promises us to break these barriers, right? To produce content that showcases what storytelling is and the real power of storytelling, right? I'll quickly share an example with you guys uh, about producing effective content and about storytelling in confronting some of these narratives, right? And one such example is just give me a second. So you all would know what happened on 2019 April 21st, right? Sri Lanka faced one of the deadliest bombings post-war after 2019, right? And one thing you might have noticed is social media was literally filled with hate, right? Especially the hate was directed at one community for the actions of few, right? But calling those who are directing those hatred online as racist or giving them names would really turn them off or would make them defensive, right? And that's not the way to confront that reality, right? And confront the tone or the mood that happened after the Easter Sunday attacks. Right 3 or 4 days before the Easter Sunday attacks, I, with my law college friends and we went to Bataclan, right? And we went to Bataclan and we were spending time very close to uh, we went to Bataclan and we were spending time in a place called this Gandhi Park, right, which is only 100 meters away from where this deadliest attack has happened, right? Just 4 days before this attack, right? And when I went to the Gandhi Park, I saw this old gentleman who was selling balloons. He's from the Muslim community who was selling balloons. I like photography, so I asked him, "Uncle, can I take a picture of you?" And he was like, "Of course." And he posed, right? He was very amusing with all those balloons, which matched the stripes of his shirt. So I really wanted to take a portrait, right? And when I was in the park hanging out with my friends, I observed that he was very jovial to all the kids, right? It didn't really matter which race or which religion those kids came from. He was making them happy. Of course, he was making a buck while selling these balloons, but he was making them happy, right? So I took this picture. We came back. Then the Easter Sunday attacks happened. Then what has like social media went on a frenzy, and everything that has followed after the attack, right? And one day I decided, right, just looking at how much hate that is directed towards the community and how the narratives are spinned in a way that was targeting a community. Why don't I confront this narrative in my own way? And I really decided to post this tale of this balloon salesman, right? And the simple thing I said was, he was standing just 100 meters away from the church where the suicide bomber blew himself up, right? But where he was standing was Gandhi Park, which is known for nonviolence, right? And because of the act of that particular bomber, a whole community was identified with a certain negative point of view, right? So if you're going to use one's example to exemplify or to generalize an entire community, I can also claim that I can use the example of this balloon salesman and say the entire community is completely right, because I'm using the same thing what you're essentially using, right? We are making an example out of one person's behavior, right? And what I saw him doing was he was making the children happy, right? He was not harming anyone. He was making everyone happy around him. But you and I know, trying to define an entire community by the acts of one person is not the right thing to do, right? Because an individual act cannot be attributed to the act of a whole community, right? And I know I would like, this is a very challenging point of view to put it out, but I anyway wrote it right after the Easter Sunday attacks, right? And I shared it online maybe a month or two after, while the hate was still going on. And when I shared it, there was a lot of feedback, and there was a lot of friends who wrote to me, even from the law school, saying, "Hey, I never thought it this way. Thank you for sharing this story," right? I'm not here to say that I'm a great storyteller or anything, right? This is even like a very simple story. But the larger point is storytelling can be this tool that can break the stereotypes, that can break these narratives that have been haunting the communities, that can break the negative shade about the communities and bring about the popular or the positive side of the communities. Storytelling is the option that can enlighten people's life, right? How do you do storytelling, right? You have everything you need. You have a smartphone. In turn, you have a decent camera. You have a device to record videos, right? Tell the stories. First, I would ask you, I would give you a homework. I don't know, like I wouldn't be meeting you after today, but ideally I would tell you, right? Write down what are the dormant narratives you hear about your community. For example, I'll tell you the examples, right? When you come from Jaffna, people tend to think you're smart, but there are a lot of not so smart people who come from Jaffna also, right? But that's a positive stereotype about those who come from Jaffna, right? And also there are a lot of negative stereotypes about those who come from the North also, right? And we all know how these stereotypes work in real life. So the moment we write these stereotypes down, we can find counter stories, counter narratives, right? How do we put these counter narratives in the mainstream, right? How do we combat these narratives with counter narratives? I'm not saying use hate against someone who is spreading hate. I'm saying use objective facts. Use your point of view against someone who is promoting hate, right? Yes, we were in a situation when the mainstream media told us, okay, this is what has happened. The only option we had was to say yes and accept it, right? We are not living that life anymore. We have an audience. We have digital tools that can really help us to share the stories of our communities, right? And when someone share a story about something you care about in a negative way, you also have this ability to keep them accountable. Go and produce these counter narratives and put it online, right? Thus, you create this ideological diversity of content that are floating there, and these counter narratives have the power to shape the perception, exactly like how these stereotypes have been shaping the perception of people all this time, right? Um, and this is what I wanted you guys to write. What are the popular narratives that are affecting your community? Your community could be anything, right? It could be your race, it could be your religion, it could be your region where you're coming from, it could be the identity that's given to you by school, it could be this identity that's coming from different initiatives you're part of. Like, identify the narratives and create counter narratives to combat if the negative narratives are negative, right? And this is essentially what we are talking about, right? Usually, how does media portray things? I'm not here to create distrust on media, but I'm here to say we don't have to rely on media alone. There is enough and more opportunity for us to produce our own stories and share it with the world, right? It would, the picture above, I know like some of you are school going, but you are grown up to understand what context this is, right? This showcases about the positive viewpoint and the real stuff, right? What's about is a perception, but what's depicted in this picture is the reality, right? And this might help you see what a positive viewpoint is and what a negative viewpoint is, right? So this is about narratives, and this is about how we tell stories, to take ownership of our narratives, to retell stories of our communities, and to say, hey, this is the truth. Listen to us, right? And I want to talk about one interesting tool called memes, right? How many of you have seen memes, and what does memes mean to you? How do you perceive memes to be? What comes to your mind when you think about memes?
They can be misleading sometimes.
Okay, they can be misleading. Okay, very good. Mhm. Can anyone say what's the equivalent of memes on a mainstream media or a newspaper? Cartoons, right? What do? They take a complicated subject or a complicated story and simplify it in a way that anyone could make sense of or anyone could understand, right? That is what we call that is what meme does, or that is what cartoon does, right? And if we really see, memes have become really powerful, right? When we say, okay, I'd rather like that than this Drake meme has become a very popular tool, right? And there's even a website called Drake Reaction Maker, which you can use and make your own memes, right? Rather than having to write a paragraph, right? You can simply tell a story by using this democratic tool called meme, right? Why I call it a democratic tool? Not everyone can make films. Not everyone are confident enough to take pictures, right? But everyone can certainly make memes if they know how to do it, right? And this is a timeless meme you would have seen, right? Everyone will like, okay, any mask would do it, right? But then the hand washing, disinfection, contact avoidance are like, dude, are you even serious, right? Um, then, has anyone of you seen him on social media? He made rounds during the presidential inauguration. His name is Bernie Sanders. He's a senator from Vermont. He was a presidential candidate from the Democratic Party, right? He became this almost like this meme lord right after the inauguration, especially for the mittens he was wearing, right? So the story of the mittens is there was this teacher, high school teacher, who woven these mittens from a used sweater, right? And there is a certain way of dressing to the presidential inauguration, but Bernie Sanders didn't really care. He just wore the mittens and came. And when the Guardians, like when he became this, like his memes were going all around the world, Guardians did a story on it. And he commented saying, in Vermont, we dress warm. We know something about cold. We are not so concerned about good fashion. We want to keep warm. And that's what I did, right? As simple as that. But social media instantly picked this photograph and made memes. And if you see how Kerala tourism did their promotion, right? Using his picture, you can see, right? Wear your warm woolen mittens and enjoy the cool, crisp Mana weather, right? This is from Kerala, Mana or Munar. I might be wrong the way I pronounce it. IKEA quickly jumped on the bandwagon and they made an ad out of it, right? And there were enough and more of these memes where Bernie Sanders is sitting, right? In the Stephen Colbert show. Then this was in UFC. And this was during the World War II with Winston Churchill, FDR, and Stalin. And one of the Sri Lankan social media leading experts, Sanjana, did this meme of where he's seated alongside with the Rajapaksa brothers. And here you can see Bernie Sanders in the Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. And in case if Bernie Sanders was about to bat, right? If he was working, right? And of course, if he was a superhero, right? The larger point I'm trying to make here is memes are also these amazing tools that we can use to tell a simple story about a complex idea, right? In a way that anyone could look at it and relate to it. So if you look at memes, right? Usually memes are where the creator remains anonymous, right? And there are only few words, simple images that are used in the memes, right? And memes are usually aimed at evoking humor or satire, right? And the timing of the release of the meme absolutely matters, right? And some memes are timeless. You might have seen those memes. And memes get edited and added on, right? And maybe this is the equivalent of modern day graffiti. Why am I speaking about memes? Because when we are active participants in the social media age, there's a higher chance that we'll come across these memes, right? And if we know a little bit more about how we can use it, we can really exploit its power. Right? This is one of my favorite memes, right? All they needed was a simple picture and a simple caption with an emoji saying, it all starts with a dream, where an Uber driver was caught taking a photograph of a supercar, right? You might have known the constitutional crisis that happened in 2018 in Sri Lankan parliaments, where not so honorable members truly displayed their color, where they threw chili powder and threw water at each other, right? And this was I don't know whether it fits into the age of this group, but Then again, when adults are like, I promise I won't get all political, and three drinks later, this is what happens about the political conversations. This was also like simple idea, right? Rather than saying Sri Lanka was losing World Cup, right? They made a meme out of it, and it was quite brilliant in its take. And you know, when Trump banned Huawei from the US, like the US like App Store, like Google and all the US services for banned from providing services for Huawei, and the Huawei phone users are thinking about what to do next with their phone right now, and they put the photos of our prime minister during this, right? Right. So, as you guys say, right, memes are this ever more powerful tool that can really capture the attention of the public and drive home a message, right? So what has really caused this paradigm shift in storytelling, right? Our parental generation did not have all these opportunities to convey their ideas, to communicate their emotions, to share what they felt about with the world, right? But we do have this unique opportunity to tell our stories, to tell where we stand at issues, to showcase what we believe in, to showcase, and we are at an instance where we don't have to depend on anyone to do it. We don't have to go someone who knows photography to come and photograph. You all can do it, right? With simple knowledge, right? You can make your own videos. You can create your own memes. You can write your own poetry, right? Back then, there was a time if you wanted to become a filmmaker, you have to go, you have to wait, you have to be an assistant director and all that, right? But right now, if you have a simple mobile phone with a video camera, and you have everything in your mobile phone, you can shoot on your mobile phone, you can edit on your mobile phone, you can compose music on your mobile phone, you can create a promo on your mobile phone, you can create a poster on your mobile phone, you can create a logo or the title on your mobile phone, you can do the publishing on your mobile phone, right? So what has really caused the paradigm shift in storytelling, in the ability to communicate ideas? First one is the internet revolution, right? It has made the information sharing a more democratic process, right? Secondly, the smartphone revolution, right? Yes, internet revolution made it possible, but like pocket-sized computers, which are smartphones, made it even more possible, right? And the third one, more than internet revolution, social media revolution, which is also referred as Web 2.0, really made this paradigm shift possible, right? And you can see how the social media market is growing in Sri Lanka. And if you say, for every 2 persons, there are 3 SIM cards registered in Sri Lanka, but only half of Sri Lanka is connected online, and only 1/3 of Sri Lanka uses Facebook. If you take 2 persons, there's a higher chance that only one of them would have internet connection. And if you take 3 persons, there's a higher chance that there's only one out of those 3 would have social media connectivity. What's the point I'm trying to make here is that we are talking about the opportunities faced by the virtual platforms, right? How education is being revolutionized, how we can stay at home and study. But one bitter truth all of us Sri Lankans should also accept is that while some of us are privileged, there's literally half of the country that does not have internet, that does not have connectivity, and that is left behind in the process. And maybe this is what the modern day poverty might look like. So the paradigm shift of storytelling is done by internet revolution, social media revolution, and smartphone revolution, right? And what the real purpose of storytelling is to bridge this gap between perception and reality. And how do we bring out the realities of our communities? And how do we make a change in our communities using storytelling? Because the moment we change the perception about our communities, it's very easy to unite communities together, bring communities together, and share our stories together. And all of us are citizen journalists one way or the other. We can tell the stories of our communities. We don't have to rely too much on the mainstream media anymore, right? Because we have the press tools at our disposal to do the necessary work. How do we really use its power to do the necessary work? So what's the idea we have spoke throughout today, right? Digital storytelling. Storytelling is the process of communicating an idea or a feeling or an emotion, right, to the rest of the world, from a storyteller to the audience, right? Then we spoke about the tools of storytelling, right? Anything that makes the storytelling easy, right? Rather than talking about something, it's easier to show the picture, right? That is why if you see social media, then like a text statuses, like the photos have twice more engagement, videos have 4 times more engagement, and live videos have 8 times more engagement, because those are powerful storytelling tools which you can use, right? It's also algorithm, but these are the tools that you can capitalize on, that you can use to tell the stories of your communities, right? Then we looked at the case study of Everyday Africa, right? How Peter DeCampo, that particular photojournalist, saw Africa in two different lights in the same photos he has taken in two different devices. DSLR showed negative photos or negative tilt. Mobile phone photographs showed what Everyday Africa looked like, and how the Everyday Africa movement came to be, where young Africans or African storytellers came out and shared their everyday stories, which they have been experiencing in their everyday lives, and how it inspired storytelling movements all around the world to showcase the positive stories or the real stories of their communities to the rest of the world, then break away from the stereotypes and the negative narratives that have been surrounding them. Then also we looked at different examples in Sri Lanka: Everyday Molotov, Everyday Betiklo, Everyday Katankudi, Jaftopedia. So these are some of the examples that were created from Sri Lanka itself, right? Then we looked at how memes are powerful tools of storytelling, how you yourself can really communicate a complex idea in a very simple way that all of them could understand by using memes, by using relatable things, by using things that evoke a particular emotion in us, right? Then we saw about what caused this change, such as the internet revolution, the social media revolution, and the smartphone revolution. And what is the purpose of storytelling? Is to bridge this gap between perception and reality, right? Once you go through the account of Everyday Africa, and when you go back and check what you've written about Africa, your perception will completely change, because so far we have been fed with all these different perceptions that was portrayed by the world outside, right? And finally, what we looked at is citizen journalism, right? Each and every one of us are journalists in our own right. We can take ownership of our narratives and tell the stories of our communities, and we can bring the communities back together by breaking the stereotypes that have been holding us apart.
So, on behalf of the Rotary Club of St. Helena United, I would like to once again thank you, Minister Tushan, for agreeing very graciously to do our project with us again. He has participated as a resource person in 2019 when we did Youth Decide for a public audience. So I think our interactors who participated today learned a lot about this new approach to storytelling, and they will go towards their houses, their communities, their schools with this message, and according to that, how to become a very effective storyteller in their surroundings.